My father's secret family destroyed everything I believed in. I used to believe I grew up in a perfect family. At least, that's how it looked from the outside. My father was the kind of man everyone in the neighborhood respected. He was a dentist, owned his own small practice, and always seemed calm, reliable, and full of wisdom. My mother was a teacher, loved by her students and admired for her patience. Together, they appeared to be the picture of stability. They had been married for over 20 years, raised me and my younger brother Daniel, and never once argued loudly enough for the neighbors to hear. For most of my childhood, I thought this was normal. Dinner at 6, vacations in the summer, Christmas with my grandparents. My dad always kissed my mom on the cheek before leaving for work. He always asked us about our grades and told us to study hard. He was the kind of man people trusted instantly, and I worshipped him. If someone had asked me who my hero was, I would have said my dad without hesitation. He taught me how to ride a bike, how to drive, how to keep my promises. He told me honesty was the most important value in life, and I believed him with all my heart. But as I would discover years later, my entire life was built on a lie. The first cracks appeared when I was about 16. It was a Saturday afternoon. Dad had promised to take Daniel and me to the park, but he never showed up. Mom said he got called into work, which wasn't unusual, but when he came home late that night, he looked different, tired, but not the kind of tired you get from drilling teeth all day, more like emotionally drained. I remember overhearing my parents talking in hushed tones in the kitchen. I couldn't catch every word, but I heard my mother say, "You can't keep doing this." And his reply, "It's complicated." At 16, I shrugged it off. Adults had complicated lives, I figured. Maybe it was about money or the practice or something boring. I went back to my homework. But once you notice a crack, you can't unsee it. Over the next couple of years, I began spotting little inconsistencies. Dad often said he was going to conferences, but he never came back with brochures or photos. Sometimes he'd leave the house dressed in casual clothes, but return in a suit, or the other way around. He always had explanations ready, but they didn't quite fit. When I started college, I noticed even more. Dad would disappear for whole weekends. Mom would tell us not to ask questions. Daniel was too young to care, but I couldn't ignore it anymore. One Sunday evening, Dad returned home later than usual. He smelled faintly of perfume. Not Mom's perfume. Something floral and sharp. I asked him directly, "Were you with someone?" He laughed it off. "Don't be silly. I was helping a colleague with his car." It sounded ridiculous, but he said it with such confidence that part of me wanted to believe him. The real unraveling began after my 20th birthday. It was during summer break, and I had gone back home for a few weeks. One evening, Dad said he had to see a patient, something about an emergency crown replacement. But when he left his phone on the table by mistake, it buzzed with a message. I swear I wasn't trying to snoop, but the screen lit up and the words burned into my brain. "The kids miss you. Will you come by tomorrow?" My blood froze. Kids? What kids? I stared at the phone until my hands shook. Before I could think, I opened the message thread. There were dozens of texts. Pictures, too. A little boy and a girl, maybe around 5 and 7 years old. And in every photo, my father was with them, smiling, holding them, even kissing the woman who sent the text. I couldn't breathe. My father had another family. I dropped the phone as if it had burned me. My heart pounded so loudly I thought Mom would hear it. When Dad came back that night, I couldn't look at him the same way. The next morning, I confronted him. My voice was shaking, but I said the words anyway. "Who are those kids?" His face went pale. For the first time in my life, my dad didn't have an answer. He just stared at me, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Finally, he whispered, "It's not what you think." But of course, it was exactly what I thought. That confrontation was just the beginning. That first night after I discovered the texts, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, the faces of those kids haunted me. A boy and a girl smiling at the camera, sitting on my father's lap as if he were the most loving dad in the world. I couldn't stop comparing it to my own childhood. The bedtime stories, the way he taught me to ride my bike, the way he clapped the loudest at my school play. I had believed those moments were special, unique. But now I realized he'd been repeating the same rituals with 2 other children. It made everything feel counterfeit, like my memories had been forged. The next morning, Dad tried to act normal. He poured himself coffee, asked Daniel about his video games, and asked me if I wanted to join him at the clinic later. I couldn't stand it. "Are you seriously going to pretend everything's fine?" I snapped. His hand froze on the coffee mug. He glanced at me, then at Daniel, then back at me. "Not now," he muttered. "Then when?" I shot back. "When do you plan on telling this that you've been living a double life? When do you plan on explaining why you have 2 other children calling you dad?" Daniel's fork clattered against his plate. His wide eyes darted between us. "What's going on?" My father's jaw tightened. "Eat your breakfast, Daniel." "No," I said firmly. "He deserves to know too." But Dad stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "Not now," he repeated, louder this time. His voice had an edge I had never heard before, sharp, almost panicked. Then he stormed out of the kitchen, leaving silence in his wake. Daniel turned to me, his voice trembling. What did he mean? What's going on? I felt my stomach twist. I wanted to protect him, but I couldn't keep lying. Dad has another family. The words felt poisonous, as if speaking them out loud made them more real. Daniel's face went blank. Then he laughed nervously. "No, that's impossible. You're joking, right?" I shook my head. I wish I was. The following days were chaos. Dad avoided me as much as possible. Mom looked exhausted, as if a storm she had tried to contain for years had finally broken loose. Daniel refused to talk to anyone, locking himself in his room for hours. Finally, I cornered Mom one evening while she was grading papers. I asked her quietly, "You knew, didn't you?" Her eyes glistened with tears. She set her pen down and folded her hands. "I suspected? For years. Why didn't you leave him?" Her lips trembled. "Because I loved him. Because I wanted you and Daniel to have a father. Because I hoped maybe I was wrong." "But you weren't." "No, I wasn't." The truth weighed on me like a stone. I couldn't focus on anything. Books, friends, even food. My mind kept circling back to those text messages, those children who were my siblings, whether I liked it or not. And then came the breaking point. On Thursday afternoon, after Dad claimed he was quote-unquote working late, I followed him. I felt like some cliché detective from a bad movie, my hands sweaty on the steering wheel as I trailed his car through town. He drove with purpose, not to the clinic, but to a small neighborhood across the city. The houses were modest, but well-kept, with trimmed lawns and flower beds. My heart hammered as he parked in front of a beige 2-story house. He got out carrying a bag of groceries and walked up to the door. The door opened before he even knocked. A woman appeared, a woman I had never seen before. She was younger than my mother, maybe mid-30s, with long, dark hair and an easy smile. The moment she saw him, her face lit up with affection. She leaned in and kissed him softly, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. Then 2 children ran out, the same boy and girl from the photos. They squealed, "Daddy!" and wrapped their arms around his legs. And my father laughed. That warm, familiar laugh I thought belonged only to us. He scooped him up, one on each arm, like he was the happiest man alive. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. My chest felt hollow. This was his real family. Or at least that's how it looked. I drove home in a daze, replaying the scene over and over. That night when Dad returned, I confronted him again. "I saw you," I said, my voice shaking with fury. "I saw them. I saw her." He froze. "You followed me? Don't turn this on me," I shouted. "How long were you planning on keeping this a secret? Until you died, or until one of us ran into them by accident?" He rubbed his face with both hands, suddenly looking years older. "I never wanted you to find out like this." "Oh, I'm sorry. What's the proper way to find out your dad's a liar and a cheater? Should we have scheduled a family meeting?" "Please," he said softly. "It's not that simple." "It is that simple. You betrayed us." Behind me, I heard a sound. Daniel stood in the doorway, his face pale, his eyes red from crying. "Is it true?" he whispered. Dad opened his mouth, but no words came out. That silence was all the confirmation Daniel needed. He bolted up the stairs, slamming his bedroom door so hard the walls shook. I turned back to Dad, my throat tight. "You destroyed us." Then I walked away. The days that followed felt like living in a stranger's house. Conversations were clipped, meals were silent, and every room buzzed with tension. Finally, Dad sat us down. Mom, Daniel, and me. His hand shook as he spoke. "I never meant to hurt you. I make mistakes. I fell in love with someone else, but that doesn't mean I don't love you too." "Love?" I repeated bitterly. "You call this love?" Mom's face was expressionless, but her eyes glistened. Dad continued. "Her name is Claire. We met years ago. I didn't plan for it to happen, but it did. And the children, they're innocent. They deserve a father." The night after Claire appeared at our doorstep, the air in the house was so thick with tension, it was hard to breathe. Mom barely spoke to anyone. Dad didn't come home at all. Daniel locked himself in his room again, and I lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying Claire's words in my head. "He loves you. He talks about you all the time." Did that mean anything? Or was it just another lie layered on top of the mountain of deceit we were already buried under? A week later, the situation escalated. Dad asked me to meet him at a cafe downtown. At first, I wanted to refuse, but some stubborn part of me needed answers. When I arrived, he was already there, sitting at a corner table. He looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, hair disheveled. "Thanks for coming," he said softly. I crossed my arms. "Make it quick." He sighed. "I know you hate me right now, and I deserve that. But you need to understand. I never stopped loving you or your brother or your mom." "Stop," I snapped. "Stop pretending love excuses what you did." His jaw tightened. "I made mistakes, but those kids, they didn't ask for this. They need me too." The words stung. They need me too. As if we were suddenly in competition for our father's affection. "So what's the plan?" I demanded. "Do you just bounce back and forth between families forever? Do you think we'll all just accept it?" His eyes dropped to the table. "I don't know." And that was the moment it hit me. He truly didn't have a plan. He had built two lives, stacked lies on lies, and now it was all collapsing, and he had no idea how to pick up the pieces. Meanwhile, Mom was unraveling. One evening, I found her sitting in the living room with a half-empty glass of wine, staring blankly at the wall. She never drank much, so seeing her like that shook me. "Mom?" I asked gently. She turned to me with glassy eyes. I wasted 20 years of my life. 20 years. And for what? So he could laugh with her while I sat here like a fool? Don't say that, I tried to reassure her. You gave us a home. You raised us. Her face crumpled. But I couldn't keep him. I wasn't enough. Hearing her say that broke something inside me. She was the strongest woman I knew, and yet my father had reduced her to this, doubting her worth, blaming herself for his betrayal. Daniel, on the other hand, was spiraling in his own way. He stopped going out with friends, skipped soccer practice, and his grades plummeted. One night, I caught him sneaking out through the window. "Where are you going?" I demanded. "None of your business," he muttered. "Daniel, stop! Talk to me!" He turned, his eyes red-rimmed. "Why should I? You don't get it. Nothing matters anymore. Dad ruined everything." I grabbed his arm. "Don't let him ruin you too." For a moment, he looked like a little boy again, scared, lost. But then he yanked free and disappeared into the night. I sat on the porch steps for hours, waiting until he came back. When he finally did, just before dawn, he looked broken. I didn't ask where he'd been. I was just grateful he was alive. The breaking point came 2 weeks later. Dad invited us all, Mom, Daniel, and me, to dinner at a restaurant. Against my better judgment, we went. When we arrived, I realized why he had insisted. Claire was there, and the kids. The sight of them sitting at the table made my stomach twist. Claire gave a small, polite smile. The kids, oblivious to the storm brewing, waved at us happily. Mom froze. "You've got to be kidding me." She hissed. "Please," Dad said quickly. "Just sit. We need to talk like adults." But there was nothing adult about the scene that unfolded. Mom's voice dripped with venom. "You humiliated me. You betrayed me. And now you expect me to play happy family with your mistress?" Claire flinched. "I'm not trying to replace you." "Then what are you doing here?" Mom demanded. The children looked between them, confused. One of them asked softly, "Daddy, what's happening?" That simple question cracked the facade wide open. Daniel shoved his chair back violently, nearly toppling it. "I'm not doing this," he snapped and stormed out of the restaurant. I followed him, my chest aching. Inside, I could still hear my mother shouting, my father pleading, Claire crying, and the children whimpering. It was chaos, and there was no going back. Later that night, when we were finally home, Mom made her decision. "I want a divorce," she said firmly. Her voice shook, but there was steel underneath. Dad said nothing. His shoulders sagged, his face pale. For once, he had no excuses, no explanations. And just like that, the family I thought would last forever shattered into pieces. After Mom said the word divorce, something inside me shattered. I had suspected it was coming, but hearing it out loud made it real. Daniel punched a hole in his bedroom wall that night. I heard the crash, rushed in, and found him sitting on the floor, his knuckles bleeding. He didn't even cry, just stared at the damage with empty eyes. "Does this mean he's gone for good?" he asked quietly. I didn't know how to answer. The weeks that followed blurred together in a haze of lawyers' appointments, whispered arguments, and tense silences. Mom was determined this time. No more excuses, no more waiting for Dad to change. She filed the paperwork quickly. Dad tried to fight it at first. He showed up at the house with flowers, begged Mom to think about the kids, but she wouldn't budge. "I am thinking about the kids," she snapped. "That's why I won't let them grow up watching me accept lies as love." It was the first time I'd seen her truly angry, and I realized just how strong she really was. But strength didn't erase the pain. One Saturday afternoon, Dad asked me to meet him again. Against my better judgment, I agreed. This time, he didn't take me to a cafe. He drove me straight to Claire's house. I froze when I realized where we were. "Why are we here?" I demanded. "Because you need to see for yourself," he said quietly. "See what?" "That they're not the enemy. They're just kids, your brother and sister." The words hit me like a punch. Brother and sister. I hadn't thought of them that way. To me, they were strangers, the living proof of Dad's betrayal. But he was right, wasn't he? Biologically, they were part of me. I wanted to leave. I wanted to slam the car door and run. But before I could, the front door opened and the kids came bounding out. "Daddy!" they shouted, rushing into his arms. He hugged them tightly, then turned to me. "This is your sister Anna, and this is your brother Max." Anna was 7, with dark curls and wide brown eyes. Max was 5, with a gap-toothed grin. They looked at me curiously, unsure. I stood frozen. "Say hello," Dad urged gently. Anna stepped forward first. "Hi," she said shyly. Max waved enthusiastically. "Hi." Something inside of me twisted. They were innocent. None of this was their fault, but being near them felt like betrayal to my mom and Daniel. I forced a smile. "Hi." My voice cracked. Claire appeared in the doorway, watching silently. She didn't say anything, just gave me a small nod, as if thanking me for not turning away. Inside their house, everything felt surreal. Family photos lined the walls, photos that looked eerily similar to the ones in our home. Birthday parties, Christmas mornings, beach trips. Except in these, it was Claire standing beside my father, not Mom. I felt sick. It was like stepping into a parallel universe where my family had been erased. Anna showed me her drawings. Max insisted on demonstrating his toy cars. They laughed, tugged at my sleeves, called me sister without hesitation. And for a brief moment, despite myself, I felt warmth. But then I pictured Daniel at home, angry and broken, and Mom crying into her pillow. The warmth turned to guilt. When I finally left, I couldn't look at Dad. "Don't ever put me in that position again," I whispered. That night, I confessed everything to Daniel. "You met them?" he exploded, his fist clenched. "How could you? After everything he's done to us?" "They're just kids," I said weakly. "They didn't ask for this." "And neither did we," he shouted. "But do you see anyone caring about us? No, it's always about them now." His voice cracked with rage and pain. "I hate him. I hate them. I wish they didn't exist." I grabbed his shoulders. "Don't say that. It's not their fault. They stole our dad." And in that moment, I realized the truth. No matter what I did, no matter how hard I tried to make sense of it, someone would always get hurt. The divorce moved quickly. Within months, Dad had moved out permanently, into Claire's house. Mom changed. She became quieter, but sharper. She focused on her work, threw herself into taking care of us, but I could tell she was hurting. Sometimes I caught her staring at old family photos before slipping them into boxes and shoving them into the attic. Daniel spiraled further. His grades tanked. He got into fights at school. One night, the police brought him home after catching him drinking with older kids in the park. Mom broke down, sobbing. "I'm losing him," she whispered, and I knew I had to step up. I had to be the one to keep us from falling apart completely. Meanwhile, Dad tried to maintain contact. He called, he texted, he invited us to dinner. Daniel refused every time. I went occasionally, mostly out of guilt. One evening during dinner at Claire's house, I noticed how happy Dad looked, happier than I had seen him in years. He laughed easily, kissed Claire's hand, helped Anna with her homework, ruffled Max's hair. And for a brief moment, despite myself, I felt warmth. But then I pictured Daniel at home, angry and broken, and Mom crying into her pillow. The warmth turned to guilt. Then came the night of the accident. Daniel had been out late again. Mom paced the living room, wringing her hands. I was about to call the police when headlights flashed outside. Dad was at the door, carrying Daniel in his arms. My brother's face was pale, his body limp. "He's fine," he said quickly, panic in his eyes. "He just had too much to drink. I found him before the cops." Mom's face contorted with fury. "This is your fault. You broke him." Dad looked like he'd been slapped. "I'm trying to help." "You've done enough," she spat. "Get out." But before he left, he turned to me, desperation in his voice. "Please, don't hate me." I didn't answer. That night, sitting by Daniel's bedside as he slept off the alcohol, I realized something. No matter how much I hated my father, no matter how much damage he had caused, I couldn't erase the truth. He was still my dad, and some part of me still wanted his approval, his love. But could I ever forgive him? Could any of us?
After the night of Daniel's collapse, things only grew heavier in our house. Mom barely spoke to Dad anymore. Daniel avoided him like the plague. And me? I was stuck in the middle, torn between anger, guilt, and a strange, confusing sense of loyalty I couldn't shake. The tension builds. One Sunday morning, Dad showed up unannounced. He was holding a bag of groceries, as if that would make things better. "I thought I'd cook breakfast for everyone," he said, smiling nervously. Mom's jaw tightened. "You don't live here anymore." "I know," he said softly, "but I'm still their father." Daniel stormed down the stairs, his voice dripping with venom. "You're their father now," he snapped, jerking his thumb toward the door, as if pointing at Claire's house. The silence that followed was suffocating. I couldn't stand it. "Stop," I begged. "This isn't helping anyone." But no one listened. Dad left without cooking breakfast. Mom cried in the kitchen. Daniel slammed his bedroom door so hard the frame cracked. And I sat there, wondering how long a family could hold together when every piece was splintered. My first visit alone. A few weeks later, I did something I never thought I'd do. I visited Claire's house alone. I told myself it was just to drop off something Dad had forgotten. But the truth was, I wanted answers. Claire opened the door, surprised. "Oh, hi." I hesitated. "Is my dad here?" "He'll be back soon. Do you want to come in?" I almost said no, but then Anna peeked out from behind her. "Sister," she squealed. The word hit me in the chest. Against my better judgment, I stepped inside. Their house was warm, cluttered, full of laughter. Anna showed me her room. Max climbed onto my lap and demanded I read him a story. Claire offered me tea, her hands trembling slightly. For the first time, I saw her not as the woman who ruined my family, but as a human being. She looked tired, anxious, almost apologetic. "I never wanted to hurt you. I know you hate me, and I don't blame you. But I love him, and he loves you too. I hope one day you can see that." I didn't know what to say. I just nodded, my throat too tight for words. Daniel finds out. Of course Daniel found out. He always did. "You went there?" he shouted, his eyes blazing. "You sat in her house with her kids?" "They're Dad's kids too," I whispered. No, don't you dare say that." His face turned red. "You're betraying Mom. You're betraying me." I tried to explain, but he wouldn't hear it. "If you want to be part of their family, go ahead, but don't expect me to ever forgive you." That night, he didn't come home. He stayed at a friend's house, ignoring my calls, and for the first time, I realized I might lose my brother too. The breaking point. The real breaking point came during a court hearing about custody. Mom wanted full custody, furious at Dad for exposing us to his other life. Dad wanted shared custody, arguing that we needed both parents. Daniel testified, his voice steady, his words sharp. "I don't want to live with him, ever. He destroyed everything. I don't trust him." When it was my turn, I froze. The judge asked, "Do you want to spend time with your father?" I looked at Dad, his eyes pleading. I looked at Mom, her face full of quiet pain. I thought about Daniel, broken and angry, and I thought about Anna and Max, who didn't even understand why their big sister was crying all the time. I I don't know, I whispered. It wasn't the answer anyone wanted, but it was the truth. Dad's breakdown. After the hearing, Dad caught up with me in the parking lot. He looked wrecked, dark circles under his eyes, his hands trembling. I'm losing you, he said hoarsely. I've already lost Daniel, but I can't lose you too. I wanted to scream at him, tell him it was his fault that he had chosen this mess. But instead, I asked the question that had been eating at me for months. Why? Why couldn't you just choose one life, one family? Why did you need both? He broke then. Right there in the parking lot, my father, my strong, invincible father, cried like a child. I was a coward, he admitted. I loved your mom. I loved you and Daniel, but I loved Claire too. And instead of making a choice, I lied to everyone. I thought I could keep it together. I thought I could have it all. But now I've destroyed everything. Hearing him admit it didn't make things better. It just made the weight of it all crash down harder. Daniel's spiral. Meanwhile, Daniel spiraled deeper. He started skipping school altogether, hanging out with older guys who used him for trouble. One night, he didn't come home at all. Mom was frantic. I called Dad, even though I knew Daniel would hate me for it. We found him hours later, half drunk, sitting on the hood of a car in a deserted parking lot. When Dad approached, Daniel exploded. Get away from me! You don't get to care! You're not my dad anymore. Those words broke something in Dad. I saw it in his face. He didn't argue. He just stood there, silent, while Daniel stormed off. And I realized my brother might never forgive him. My choice. I was caught in the middle, forced to choose between two worlds. With Mom and Daniel, loyalty, anger, and broken pieces of the life we once had. With Dad, Claire, Anna, and Max, guilt, confusion, but also unexpected warmth. One night, lying awake, I asked myself, what does it mean to be a family? Blood? Loyalty? Choice? I didn't know the answer. But I knew one thing. If I didn't make peace with it somehow, I'd lose everyone. The confrontation. It all came to a head during Anna's birthday party. Dad invited me. Against every instinct, I went. The kids were thrilled to see me. Claire was kind but cautious. For a while, it almost felt normal. Cake, balloons, laughter. Then, Daniel showed up. I didn't even know how he found out, but he stormed into the backyard, his face twisted with fury. What the hell is this? You're celebrating with them while Mom's at home crying? Everyone froze. The kids clung to Claire, frightened. Daniel, please, I started, but he cut me off. You're dead to me, he hissed. Both of you. He glared at Dad, then at me. I don't have a father, and I don't have a sister. And then he left. The silence he left behind was deafening. Aftermath. That night I cried harder than I ever had before. I had lost my brother, the one person who had always been by my side. Dad tried to comfort me, but I pulled away. Don't touch me, I whispered, because the truth was, no matter how hard I tried to bridge the gap, my family was breaking beyond repair, and I didn't know if there was any way to fix it. Silence after the storm. After Daniel stormed out of Anna's birthday party, silence swallowed everything. The sound of balloons swaying in the evening breeze felt louder than the muffled sobs of little Anna clinging to her mother. Claire ushered the children inside, her face pale. Dad stood frozen in the backyard, staring at the gate Daniel had slammed behind him. And I couldn't move. I felt torn in half. Part of me wanted to chase after my brother, to beg him not to cut me off completely. Another part of me wanted to collapse into Dad's arms because, despite everything, he was still my father. Instead, I stood rooted to the ground, paralyzed by a fear I couldn't name. A shattered home. When I returned home that night, Mom was waiting for me. Her eyes were red, but her voice was steady. "Where were you?" she asked. I hesitated. At Anna's birthday. Her lips trembled. For a moment, I thought she would scream, but instead she whispered, "Do you know what that feels like? To sit here alone while my children celebrate with her?" I wanted to defend myself, but I couldn't. She was right. I had betrayed her. "I'm sorry," I said, tears choking me. She shook her head. "Don't apologize to me. Decide who you are. Decide where you stand. Because right now, you're trying to keep everyone happy and you're destroying yourself." Those words echoed in my head for weeks. Daniel's silence. Daniel didn't speak to me. He ignored my texts, blocked my calls, and when we passed in the school hallway, he looked right through me. The brother who had once been my best friend was gone. One night, I found him sitting in the driveway, smoking a cigarette. "Daniel," I whispered. He didn't even look at me. "Go inside. Please, just talk to me." Finally, he turned, his eyes hollow. "You made your choice. You picked him. Don't expect me to forgive that." And then he walked away, leaving me shattered. Dad's desperation. Meanwhile, Dad grew more desperate. He texted me constantly, asking to meet. He showed up outside school, waiting in his car. One afternoon, he cornered me after class. "Please," he begged, "don't give up on me. I know I ruined everything, but I can't lose you too." I snapped. "Do you realize what you've done? Daniel hates me now. Mom barely looks at me. And you—" My voice cracked. "You split me in two. I can't be whole anymore." He broke down right there in the parking lot. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so damned sorry." But apologies didn't stitch wounds. Claire's letter. A few weeks later, Claire reached out. Not with a text, not with a call, but with a handwritten letter slipped into my locker. "I know I've taken something from you," it began. "I don't expect forgiveness, but I want you to know I never wanted this pain for you. I love your father, but I never wanted to erase you, or your mother, or Daniel. You are part of him, and because of that, you are part of me too. If you ever need me, not as a rival, but as a human being, I'm here." I read it over and over. Tears blurred the ink. For the first time, I believed her. She hadn't stolen my father. He had given himself away. The collapse. Everything came crashing down the night Dad ended up in the hospital. Stress, guilt, exhaustion, it finally broke him. He collapsed at work, his heart struggling under the weight of secrets and shame. When I arrived at the hospital, Claire was already there with the kids. Mom arrived moments later. The sight of them, both women, both families, standing on opposite sides of his bed, was surreal. Daniel refused to come. Dad lay pale and weak, tubes in his arms. When he opened his eyes and saw us, tears streamed down his face. "I'm sorry," he croaked, "for everything." Mom turned away, unable to look at him. Claire held his hand, silent, and I squeezed his other hand because no matter how broken I felt, I couldn't stop loving him. The decision. In the days that followed, reality set in. Dad would survive, but nothing would be the same. Mom filed for divorce. She said she couldn't keep living in half shadows. For once, I didn't blame her. Daniel told me he wanted to move in with her full time, to cut Dad out completely. He was done. And me? I stood at a crossroads. One night, I sat outside under the stars, asking myself the same question again. What does it mean to be family? And I realized maybe it wasn't about loyalty or blood. Maybe it was about choice, about who you let into your heart. So I made a choice. I chose to keep loving my mom, even in her pain. I chose to keep reaching out to Daniel, even if he rejected me. And I chose not to abandon my father, even though he had abandoned us first. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't clean, but it was real. 1 year later. A year passed. Mom rebuilt her life. She started smiling again, little by little. Daniel still refused to speak to Dad, but he softened toward me, at least enough to let me sit beside him at dinner without glaring. Dad lived with Claire and their kids openly now. There were no more lies. Sometimes I visited, Anna and Max adored me, and against all odds, I grew to love them too. It wasn't the life I had wanted. It wasn't the family I had once believed in, but it was something. Final reflection. When people hear my story, they always ask, "Do you forgive him?" The truth is complicated. Forgiveness isn't a single moment. It's a choice I have to make every day. Some days I hate him. Other days I remember the father who once held me on his shoulders at the park, and I ache with love. What I know for certain is this: secrets destroy. Lies rot families from the inside out. My father wanted everything, and in the end, he lost almost all of it. But I also know this: broken doesn't always mean ruined. Sometimes, out of the cracks, a new kind of family grows. Different, messy, imperfect, but real. And that's the family I'm learning to live with.